All right, welcome back to Life Fit with DVD. Thanks for being here. Today, I wanted to talk about 10 signs that you lack self differentiation. So, first, I think it's important to define what is self differentiation. And ultimately, that is about being aware of who you are versus who everybody else is. Having some sort of concept of who you are, what you stand for, your principles, your values, the things that make you you, and the awareness around where that line in the sand is between you and everybody else's values, principles, and all of that. So today, I mean, if you're here, maybe you're curious about self differentiation and if you have it or not. So let's go through 10 signs that you have it. Or you don't have it, sorry. So, one, you absorb others' emotions very quickly. So, when other people are in bad moods, that becomes your bad mood in a matter of minutes, potentially even seconds. Others bring you down when they bring up their stuff, their venting, their negativity. And I mean, it's one thing to be brought down by that because I mean, it's easy for people to be brought down by the negativity because it is a thing. But if it's happening to you very quickly, right, then you might not be able to differentiate yourself from the other person, right? What is their bad mood versus yours? So, two, conflict can terrify you. You'd rather lie about something than risk the disapproval or actually addressing, the issue with the other person, right? And this is a very common thing, it feels like, that, people tell white lies just because they don't want to deal with the blowback of actually telling the truth to somebody and why they're actually doing what they're doing. But ultimately, right, this shouldn't be coming from a place of fear, right, that you're lying about it, right? You need to be having good relationships, not just with others but yourself as well, right? You need to be upfront and be honest with yourself instead of lying about especially trivial things. Three, your opinions shift with the room, right? It's one thing to be able to blend in, to kind of be a natural chameleon and or social butterfly, right? That can kind of get around and you're able to just fit in with everybody. But at the same time, if you are not standing for your own opinions in that room, in that environment, right? And instead you are mirroring other people, right? Their beliefs, their values, right? It's one thing that if you want to fit in with them, but it's another thing if you are just dissolving yourself in that process, right? I think it's okay if you want to be tactful and respectful of other people's values and principles and opinions in another environment, right? Reading the room, right? Reading the culture, the ethnicity, all of that. But if you're going to dissolve yourself and you're not going to even offer your sort of opinion, right? You might have some issues with self differentiation. So, four, you over explain constantly. So, you're afraid that others won't accept your no. And ultimately, you might get a little bit defensive. You might start to feel like you need to explain yourself instead of just putting it out there that, yeah, you know, this is why, well, just saying no is fine. You don't need to justify. I mean, and even for me, it's just, oh, yeah, explain why. But you don't need to say why, right? Sometimes you just have an opinion and it doesn't need, you have a decision and it doesn't need explanation further. And this is definitely something that I have had to work on over time where You don't need to say more, right? You just put your answer out there. And maybe you over explain because you want to kind of soften the blow. You don't want other people to be upset by your decision, so you feel the need to sugarcoat it. Once again, I'm on. I am guilty of this, but you don't need to, right? They have their stuff, you have your stuff and your decisions. So if you're over explaining constantly, that might be another thing that's going on for you, that you lack that self differentiation. 5, you feel responsible for everyone else's happiness. So their frustration feels like your failure. If you're doing this all the time, or you feel like, oh no, I made them upset, or oh, I made them angry, no, no, that's their stuff, right? It's up to them. It's up to others to be responsible for their own emotions. You can be happy with yourself, and other people can be happy with their stuff. And if something you do changes their mood, that isn't necessarily you. Now, if you physically did something to them, or you lied to them, or you did something that affects them in some way, not emotionally, but like decisionally, or operationally, or maybe you did do something hurtful to another person, but ultimately that's on them. They have to deal with that, and it is not your responsibility. So it's very important to know the difference, because it's a fine line, right? 6, your identity is role based. So people pleasing, right? I mean, if you are taking the fall as an employee, as a scapegoat in a family system, if you're, you know, walking on eggshells to make sure that other people are happy, and that is who you see yourself as being, right? You lack self differentiation. You need to know who you are, what you stand for, and it's one thing to be able to know, right, what you are. It's another to know what others are and how they're affecting you. So you have to go in and look at what you see as your identity, right? Is your identity to keep other people happy? Is your identity based on playing some role in your community, your family, right? You may lack self differentiation. 7, the fear of being alone with your thoughts. So silence can equal some sort of existential panic, right? It feels very uncomfortable. Maybe nothing comes up. You might start to get a little bit anxious. Being alone with your thoughts, hey, that's okay, right? It's okay. But if you're feeling anxiety, right, because you're just sitting there in silence and you don't feel like yourself, somebody else might be dictating who you are. So I got to speed up here. 8, you resent people you serve, right? You can't stop serving them, but you still have this sort of anger towards them because you feel like they should treat you better, or things should be more fair, or you're doing all of this for them and you don't feel like you're compensated fairly, or that you're being acknowledged well enough, right? If you resent these people, you lack self-differentiation. 9, your goals are somebody else's. You inherited a script, whether it be in career, values, principles, and the way to know this is that if you're asking yourself, oh, it's more of like looking at yourself and oh, well, I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and this is just my path. But internally you feel some sort of resentment or upset towards that, thinking, oh, maybe this isn't my path, or should that thought appear, right? You need to look at it closer. But look at where these goals that you have come from. Do they feel like you? Do they represent you? Are they who you want to be and who you're becoming? 10. You judge yourself by external metrics. So, likes, promotions, praise. This is basically everything on social media. If you're getting wrapped up in how many followers, likes you have, and that's giving you dopamine hits that, oh, I got to do more of this thing because this is what people want, that is obviously not you. Not you. All right, so with that being said, these signs that you lack some sort of self-differentiation, let's go through some sort of tips to go through how you can get better at being aware of who you are versus who others are. All right, so one, you got to identify emotional hijack. So know when someone's mood instantly becomes yours, right? All you can do, I mean, besides becoming aware of it, maybe you can't write it down, but if you can, write it in a journal later, or talk to somebody about it. That somebody got really upset today, and then it got me all worked up really quickly, and then they're just like popping off, and then like I'm popping off. When I say you're just getting upset and raising your voice, feeling more tension, more stress, more anxiety, you got to identify these things. 2, practice I statements, right? It sounds silly, but replace, you make me feel so mad with, I feel that you make me mad, right? You got to start with I feel. I feel this way when, right? Own the response, right? Don't use you make me feel some way. You need to get into practicing just identifying your feelings in the situation. 3, tolerate silence. So sit alone 5 minutes a day, no phone, no noise, and if you feel uncomfortable in that, just let that discomfort just dissipate in the stillness. And if it's hard, if you feel like you need to really just do something, or you just can't relax, right? You gotta try to just take those deep breaths. I've talked about it before. Change your environment. That's an option. Go for a walk out in nature. Get exercise. Do something with your physical body that can basically reset, right? If you just can't sit there because you're so worked up, you gotta get into your body. 4, define your non-negotiables. List 3 values or principles that you will not compromise, even for loved ones. And you should tell them about it. You should tell them that this is important to me. I believe this, and right, you can argue with me, or right, we can have a discussion about this. Be calm, but if this is something that is so important to you that you won't compromise, that's a good practice for self-identifying yourself. Step 5, voice a small no, right? Decline one request. This week, this month, when somebody asks you to do something that you don't want to do, right? If it's something small, just say no, right? Just outright say no. You don't need a reason. You don't need an excuse. 6, observe, don't absorb. So when tensions rise, mentally note that this is their emotion, not yours. So this is similar to point 1, but becoming aware of it is really step 1, and then step 2 would be writing it down, identifying it further. So 7, reclaim your narrative. Write something in your journal, starting with this is what I stand for, that contradicts groups that you belong to. You can be in a group and have different beliefs from them, right? It's possible. It is possible. And this is just the process of self-identification, right? Self-differentiation. That you are not the group in every single aspect. You are your own person that can be in a group, but you don't always have to identify with the group's, mind, all right, hive mind. 8, physical boundaries drill, right? Stand firm when someone pretends to push you, right? Feel your body's natural resistance. If somebody's pushing against you, trying to talk you down, just be still within yourself. Just be a wall, right? Just be an absolute wall of being calm and standing in yourself, literally standing physically, but also just internally, just being there, right? And just accepting that the conflict is not going to destroy anything, right? Other people's emotions are theirs. You have yours. You have the choice to be calm. 9, audit your shoulds. So list 5 things that you do because you think you should do something, right? Ask, who originally said that I should do this thing? And if you find that it's not you, and it's a belief, right? It's a belief that, you don't think that you don't think a certain way, but somebody else thinks something. So, oh, I should do that. Well, that's not necessarily your voice. That's their voice. Now, it's you need to be careful in this because the shoulds are a very slippery slope. Because you can look at it where it's like, this is somebody else and this is you, but at the same time, right? What is the voice? What is the voice? Is the voice feel like you? So if the voice feels like it's you, then there's no should, right? You just do. But if there's a should to it, then, maybe it is somebody else's voice. 10, morning declaration. So start each day aloud saying, today, this is what I'm doing. I'm not acting from somebody else's expectations. I'm acting from what I expect of myself. That roots you in your identity to start the day and is a great process just to, to start practicing if you're having anxiety with, other people and other things. So I hope these 10 signs and these 10 tips help you out, if you're struggling with self-differentiation. And, if you feel like you don't know yourself, right, you can build yourself, right? And it starts with looking at the things that you want. What do you want to be? Not what somebody else wants to be, or who somebody else thinks you should be, or a role, or the should, or what you think you should be, but what do you want to be, right? Ask yourself that question. And that is how you stay self-differentiated and identify your path versus the junk, the noise that others might be putting in your head. So thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. And until next time, I'll talk to you later. Bye.